there is the Tao, which is a kind of a flow of energy within the world, and there are. It's called the yin and yang concept. So there's a flow of energy through the world, and depending on the state of the flow of energy, there are sort of good times and bad times to do things, and morality in Taoism comes from the prevailing flow of the Tao. So it's like swimming in a river. So you can swim against the current, or you can go with the current, and going with the current is easier. And that's sort of the root of morality. So it's not really a divine being saying don't do this. It's more life is easier if you don't sort of cultivate jealousy. So if you try and reject wealth and try and live a peaceful life, then that is going with the life.
You need to believe in yourself. You have to have belief in the world. Real shit on trees, not superstition.
So a couple of thoughts that I would share is that Islam recognizes that there are elements, wholesome elements and good elements of truth in every religion as well, which is different from wholesale endorsement of the other faiths. And so the idea that there's good energy, there's bad energy, there's good vibes, there's bad vibes, these ideas can be found in some form or another, even in the Islamic worldview. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he taught us to avoid what's called hasad, or the envy of people, and something called the ayn, which is the evil eye. So he taught us that there's some truth to these ideas, that you can attract bad energy or bad vibes through people's jealousy or through their envy or whatnot, let alone through people's prayers. If you've wronged somebody, if you've oppressed somebody and they pray against you, that's some serious bad energy coming your way now from God. So even with the idea of the yin-yang, you could argue that there's a certain kind of dualism in the Islamic worldview, a certain kind. There's the good angels, but then there's the bad jinn or the bad spirits. There's heaven, there's hell, right? And then there's even an evil demonic force, in this world that attracts or pulls us away from God, and that is the shaitan or the devil. So my point being that there's certain elements and aspects of these different worldviews that you find also embedded in the Islamic worldview as well. But yes, a deity, a creator that is ontologically distinct from us and who does lay down some guidelines for us, that's a non-negotiable. Definitely that is part of the Abrahamic tradition. And on that note, and don't mind, because this speaker's corner, there has to be a little bit of push and pull. There has to be a little bit of testing and challenging each other a little bit. I often hear, and I don't mean to attribute all of these attitudes to you. We all kind of superficially judge one another, right? I'm guessing where you're coming from. You're kind of guessing where I might be coming from. Because we have limited time. We're not going to get to know each other very well. But often I hear Western people who are turned off from organized religion say things like, religion is kind of like wish fulfillment. Especially the Abrahamic religions, there's an aspect of wish fulfillment to that, and people want to go to heaven, they don't want to die, this, that. But I think I challenge people to apply this same cynical attitude or this skepticism also to their own worldviews as well. Could it be the case? Could it be that many Westerners, they don't want to be held to account? They want to live their lives on their own terms. They want to smoke weed if they want to, not that you do necessarily. They want to nightclub and fornicate if they want to. It's my life. I want to live it on my terms. Why should anyone else tell me what to do? So these are just things to think about as you live. That is this a convenient worldview that I've adopted because it helps me to escape moral accountability in some way? I'm not suggesting that you're immoral because of your worldview. As you said, life will still turn out better in general if we avoid genocide, right?
Words to live by.
Yeah, But theoretically, even though I think that's an extreme example, because most of us aren't toying with the idea of genocide, we all toy with the idea of drugs. We toy with the idea of what we call zina, fornication. And other smaller things we don't even think about, like being rude to our elders. I mean, who cares about that nowadays? But being rude to our parents, right? These things, yeah, maybe life might be better for me if I avoid that. But if I do it, there's no accountability anyways. At the end of the day, there's no day of judgment. There's no hellfire. There's not that kind of harsh accountability. So just consider that and apply the same skepticism that you may have applied to your parents' beliefs. Do that self-questioning with yourself as well too, right? And then finally, you mentioned science, and I think I don't have to repeat the whole Adam and Eve narrative that I was talking about. I think that is already one example that illustrates that there's less tension between science and the Quran than between science and the Bible. I'm not going to overstep and say, everything in the Quran is scientifically demonstrable and provable. So I'll say what I'm ready to back up, which is that you will find that there is less of a tension. There would be less of a tension between the findings of modern science, which of course could change. Tomorrow's findings could contravene today's findings, but there's definitely less tension and problems between findings of modern science and the Quran. And finally, some of the things that you talked about immediately after you mentioned that you're a person of science are things that could never be scrutinized through a scientific worldview. Walaikum assalam, brother. How are you? How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
First time I see you.
First time I saw you. So make dua for me. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Immediately after speaking about science, you mentioned this very interesting word called morality. I'd like to see this morality one day in a science lab. I'd like to see it in a test tube or under a microscope. So that was one example, but even when you talk about good times to do things, bad times to do things, we also believe there's sacred times. Praying in Ramadan, I don't think is the same as praying right now. They're sacred times, they're sacred spaces. But our belief in those sacred times and spaces is anchored in divine revelation, what God has informed us, what His Prophet has informed us. You also believe in good times and bad times to do things. And again, strictly speaking, I don't think you'd want to run that by your PhD dissertation advisor at the university or, you know.
I definitely wouldn't ask my supervisor about that.
I mean, talking about morality, as the brother said, when we go back into history, every society has some sort of morality they are bound with, and that morality changes throughout time. So something is good in one society at a certain point in time is not necessarily a good thing at this time. Let's take an example of the Germans. It was good at that time to hate the Jews and kill them. It was more. Now it's not more. I mean, normally, but that society has agreed, and they've taken a morality to actually have their race is the best of the race, which is incorrect. So,
ask you a few questions.
Inshallah, yeah.
Try to see how can we have universal morality away from society. So to have universal morality means we have to have an objective morality away from subjective morality.
Believing in the trees, believing in the sun, real shit.
The only way to have an objective morality is to construct an objective.
The sun gives us heat and warmth and energy. Trees give us oxygen, carbohydrates. If I worship
first of all,
if
we can
that gives me life, not your
find and
ancient
understand if there is an objective
you're
or
wrong,
necessity
you're a
outside
sinner.
from
That is evil. The
or
trees
outside
don't
from
do
the
that.
universe.
The trees are
If we
real.
agree that there is such a being,
That's a Christian term. All good men are good, bad men are bad.
But even with an objective morality given by a divine being,
Look at the
there is
evil and
debate.
division.
I don't know very much
Religion
about
has never
the
brought
morality of
people
Islam.
together. It
But if you
divides.
look at Christianity,
You're the
there
wrong
are
race, you're the
all
wrong
manner of things which
sexuality, you're the
are
wrong religion.
prohibited within the Bible, which are becoming more and more acceptable. I mean, homosexuality would be punishable by death under the original, within the sort of the scriptures of the Bible. But that is now widely accepted as moral and has been condoned by the Catholic Church and the papacy.
Not condoned, celebrated.
Celebrated, yeah.
There's other things like, for example, dietary laws. In the Bible, there is dietary laws which eat this and not eat that, and they don't abide by it.
Yeah.
So,
But I think what you're saying is an example that would support his point. From our perspective, your example is supporting our point that who makes the call? I mean, who makes this judgment? Why not incest next? And there's actually atheist spokespeople on record who have said, yeah, okay, then I guess that's fine too. If you can find a brother and sister who want to have an open sexual relationship with each other. So where are the lines drawn? I think that's part of the point that he's making. And the other thing is that it also, even from a humanist perspective, it would have bothered me. Even from a secular humanist perspective, this would have bothered me because it means that if 10,000 years of our species and our forefathers got this point wrong, and I'm not naive to the fact. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, bro? If 10,000 years or so of our human species and forefathers were wrong about this fact, what I was going to say was I'm not naive to the fact that of course there were societies that had homosexuals in it, right? But rarely was it open and celebrated. Even, believe it or not, in ancient Rome or ancient Greece, not celebrated in the sense that we're doing it today. So, in terms of a global movement that celebrates it, right? In terms of like the world, the FIFA soccer cup should not happen in Qatar because they do not celebrate, homosexuality. In that sense, if everyone got it wrong, it gives me very little hope and optimism for the human race. Yeah. It gives me very little hope that we are the first generation of human beings on this planet that can call ourselves moral and upright. We've got it right now. No, if my father and his father and his father and his father and his, they all got it wrong. They got most things wrong, in fact. Then even from a secular humanist perspective, it would really make me grieve for our condition, and it wouldn't make me very optimistic that we've got things right yet. And here's the funny thing: we would never know when we get it right or wrong because there's no ruler to measure by. There's no objective standard by which we measure. There's a Christian writer, C.S. Lewis. He said you can only judge like the straightness or the crookedness of a line if you have a ruler by which to measure it against, right? I'm paraphrasing. So these are some of the issues we have to think about. And we're not picking on any one group. In my country, I would give you the example of weed. So 30 years ago, if I was selling you weed on the streets of Toronto, I would be arrested. I would be put into jail or fined or something, right? Now, 30 years later, and 30 years is not a long span of time in the grand scheme of things. 30 years later, again, I would say we're not just condoning it, I would say we're celebrating it. It's hard. Every other street corner, every second block in Toronto, cannabis store. As a society, we've decided that cannabis stores on every block is a brilliant, wonderful idea. This is going to do wonders, apparently, for our youth down the line. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, it's celebrated in the sense that, look, it's tax revenue for the government, and never mind if some future generation or some future government is going to have to give back just as much in subsidies to fund the drug rehabilitation of people who are suffering from that, or who have used that as a gateway drug into harder drugs. So this is another problem too, that when you speak about what's beneficial and what's a good idea, we humans don't tend to think about what's a good idea for my grandchildren. We think about what's a good idea for me, right? Drinking alcohol right now in the bar is a good idea for me. It benefits me, makes me feel good. It's a social lubrication, helps me bond with my buddies from work. 10 minutes later, I could be in a drinking and driving accident. I'm not thinking about that. So we believe that God, who has all the foresight, who is the all-knowing, he is in a better position to tell us what is truly good and beneficial for us in the long run, for our grandchildren. Because if we continue on the road we're on right now, a lot of you folks aren't going to have grandchildren, man. If you don't marry, if you don't have kids. So you need a worldview, you need a faith that, I'm changing topics, sorry, a little bit, but you need something that incentivizes marriage. You need something that incentivizes wanting to have 4 or 5 kids, even if it means you can't do that summer holiday to Greece. You can't have that winter cottage up north for us Canadians. Yeah, so it's okay, man. That you know, there's other good reasons for me to want to have 4 or 5 kids. I'm a hypocrite, by the way. I've only got 1, but I'd love to have 3 or 4. You know.
This is something very important. The brother said is about the morality. You talked about morality, and that you brought the example of the Bible. Why there is so many things that in the Bible that now the community, the Western community, the Christian community, we don't abide with. The concept of Scripture in Islam is totally different than in Christianity. We believe, and it has been revealed to us, that the previous scriptures has been given to the prophets and to the people, and it has been misused and corrupted. And then God All-Wise has revealed the last revelation to Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that revelation is sealed from all corners in terms of preservation, in terms of memorization, all that. And inside that revelation, there is the objective morality, how we should live our life, and all that stuff. And if you compare the Christian society or Jewish society and the Muslim society, the laws have been revealed to us by the Almighty. In terms of the consensus or the Muslim society, we all agree and abide by it. I mean, you can see Muslims smoking, you can see Muslims drinking, but it's not a group consensus that they say. I mean, in Ramadan, you know Ramadan, it's a month of fasting. Muslims, some Muslims, they eat in Ramadan, but they eat in hiding. So it's not a general, like here, for example, everyone eat pork. In the Bible says you eat pork. Everyone here eat Big Mac where the blood, told that you shouldn't eat blood. Also, fornication is not allowed in the Bible, dietary laws and all that stuff. So what I'm saying is that there is the final revelation which came through the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which is overpowering all the other revelations, and that revelation is sealed and has been preserved since day one. In Birmingham Library, there's a manuscript of about 3 chapters or 4 chapters, which has been carbon dated to the date of the Prophet. So in terms of preservation, there is no doubt about it. So from your side, what you need to confirm is that is there a necessary being which is outside of our universe, which we call God, we call Allah, and after that try to find out, do you try to communicate to us? If you communicate to us, which is the religion, the last religion and the last message that came, and you just scrutinize that message, the messenger first of all, and then the message, and then try to falsify, just find falsification test, and if you come to a conclusion, then all what you have now in your belief, which is what you just mentioned earlier, all of it is inside of Islam. It's just now you have a connection with the creator of all this universe, which of course, I mean, you are a scientist, and we know that something doesn't come from nothing. And any type of order requires an intelligence behind it, and any type of information,
an engineer behind it.
An engineer behind it. Like for example, I was talking to someone about the DNA, and the DNA. Everyone agrees that DNA is a complicated type of information. Even Bill Gates said if it is a software, it is the most complicated type of algorithm and software, where all the what's it called, the DNA and the RNA and all that stuff. Amino acid, all the amino acids when they combine together in a certain shape and certain form. So, and everyone agrees that any type of information, I mean, I'm doing computer engineering and I have done a lot of software programming. And if you see any simple program, what you say, that definitely there is a program behind it. There's a program behind it.
Yeah.
So when we see all this universe with all its beauty and the way it has been created to sustain itself, like for example a tree dies, there is a seed comes down and then another tree comes up, a fruit can never finish, there is a cycle going on. So from here we can see that there is a design, and then if you accept that there is a design, there is a creator, and there is a revelation, then you have this revelation.
And I would summarize it just very, very quickly. Then I'd love to hear your reflections and thoughts on all of the stuff we've been talking about. But I'd just like to say very quickly that in general, the idea of God creating the universe, it should not bother you that this is some kind of unscientific belief, because even if you scratch an agnostic or an atheist enough, if you push them into a corner, everyone will end up in a supernatural corner at some point. And we didn't really discuss the origins of the universe or what you believe, but the three options that occur to me are, the deist option, that there's a deity, there's a supreme program maker, deity engineer that designed all of this. That's not anti-science, but it's not scientific in the sense that we will never prove that scientifically. Or you can believe in an eternal universe, or an eternal string of eternal universes. Again, you'll never prove that in your science lab. Or you could believe in the universe just creating itself out of truly nothingness. And again, this would be a supernatural belief, in as far as you can never, scientifically demonstrate. So if we think about sometimes the problem is that we haven't thought about these, questions. But if we think about these questions long and hard enough, each one of us will end up with a supernatural position of some sort or the other.
Yeah.
Or the cop-out of, we just don't know. Yeah, that's the point. And there's no scientific reason to believe that we will know. There's no scientific reason to believe that we will one day understand the origins of science, the origins of nature itself, so. But please be frank about any other reservations, complaints, you can feel at ease with us. We're not, we're used to hearing, people bringing up objections, and it's not a problem. But again, at the very least, just keep an open mind. Anyhow, in case our conversation ends abruptly at some point and you have to go or I have to go, I would even say, I don't know if my brother would agree, but I would even say that this kind of experiential approach that many Westerners are taking towards Buddhism, which is I haven't signed up for Buddhism, I haven't signed up for Taoism, but I make use of these practices. I would say, okay, experientially, taste Islam, What you did for those other world faiths, did you ever bow down your head to Allah in the mosque? Maybe you have, I don't know. And for some reason, a lot of non-Muslims will fast a day or two in Ramadan, maybe to demonstrate solidarity with their Muslim friends or something. Me personally, I'm not convinced that you going hungry would be the best way of you experiencing Islam. I would say try the prayer. What's the harm? You're not signing up. No one's gonna say, now you gotta sign the dotted line. With a Muslim friend, with any one of us, you're welcome to take anyone's number, email, whatnot. Try the Muslim form of the prayer, try that, see what that does for you. There'd be no harm.